Funding for Art Loft was made possible by the John S. and James L. Knight Foundation, Newman's Own, giving all profit to charity and pursuing the common good for over 30 years, Alva H. and Wyline P. Chapman Foundation, the Miami-Dade County Tourist Development Council, the Miami-Dade County Department of Cultural Affairs and the Cultural Affairs Council, the Miami-Dade County Mayor, and the Board of County Commissioners. And
in the Florida Keys and Key West, every night is a spectacular show. And every day is another masterpiece.
From the Museum of Contemporary Art in North Miami, this is Art Loft. For the next 2 weeks, we present a special series of episodes, perfect for the run up to Art Basel Miami, and I'm so excited about Art Basel. The series is called Collectors to Collectors, produced during a live event held earlier this year at MOCA. 8 prominent art collectors share their personal stories collecting contemporary and modern art, and the passions and rewards that motivate them. Our first program features Rosalind Jacobs, Boris Irmas, Irma Bremen, and Martin Margulies. Let's take a look at Collectors to Collectors.
Roz Jacobs. Now, if I had a chance to live someone's life all over again, it would be Roz. When she was in her early 20s, Macy's sent her to Paris as a buyer, and she immediately fell into the circle of the surrealists. She became very good friends with Man Ray. She was friends with Duchamp, Max Ernst, and she never thought of herself as a collector. She was there as their friend, helping them, buying their works, and being just part of this amazing circle of incredible artists.
I was a buyer at Macy's. I was the boutique buyer and the accessory buyer and the accessory stylist. And that was a time when it was rare to be sent to Europe to make these purchases. But Macy's Little Shop was really the first boutique before that Bendel Street of shops. And they decided that, at last I can go to Paris. And that was absolutely thrilling for me. The composer, Jerome Ross, introduced me to Noma and Bill Copley. And I called up, and Bill answered the phone, and he said, "Oh, Noma." And I was very young, about 21. I said, "Noma, it's that girl. I'm going to invite her over. Man Ray likes pretty girls." I had never heard of Man Ray before, and I went over, and it was an instantaneous love affair between all of us. And I must say, the Copleys really changed my whole life, and Man Ray became part of the family.
What's interesting, Roz, one of the paintings that you gave us by William Copley is Longpont, which is his estate in France, the house that everybody crashed. In the painting that we have by Copley, look at all the windows in this house, and at the very top is the painting of Man Ray's lips. And there's also a dining room table in their very unusual table that's now your dining table in New York. What was it like when you first met Man Ray?
They lived very humbly because they had absolutely no money. Not that I had that much money, I would buy a picture from Man Ray every time I was there. Didn't make any difference what it was, and every time I was there, bought another Rayograph. Well, Man Ray didn't know what to give me for a wedding present, so he said he'd take my portrait. And then one time I came to Paris, and Man met me, and he said, "I'm having a show at the National Bibliothèque, and your picture is in it. I want to take you over to look at it." And I went over, and there was my picture with all these other great pictures. And as I was leaving, I saw a picture on the wall that I absolutely fell in love with. It was the most beautiful photograph I had ever seen. Because I think surreally. And I said, "Man, that is gorgeous. Can I buy it?" And he said, "Of course." And it was the Violon d'Ingres.
We have it on the cover of the book.
And that has become his most famous photograph.
This is a favorite story of mine with Duchamp. The fact that you and your husband, Mel, were so influential in the retail world as well. Your husband at first with Bloomingdale's and later with Federated and CEO of Saks. But back and forth between the world of fashion that you lived in and the surrealism made for some very interesting stories. One of them was the paper dresses that was so popular in the 60s.
That was funny. Man Ray and Julie were staying with us, and I gave them a party. And that was the paper dress era. And all Julie wanted was a paper dress. So Mel brought her a long silver one in paper, and I gave them a great big party, and after the party was over, we all went upstairs to the bedroom. Well, it wasn't all of us, it was Marcel and his wife Jeannie, and Mel and me and Julie and Man. And Marcel and Man started to do cutouts. Julie was standing on the bed in this long silver dress, and they cut out different designs, and until the dress went to pieces, and there was Julie standing naked. So, but they did have fun.
Do you have a favorite work in your collection?
I used to think that the name Magritte was a girl's name because it was in France and it ended in TTE. This is right when I first met the Copleys, and every time I went over to, Paris, I'd go to Longpont, for the weekend, and I used to walk in and I saw this fantastic picture by Magritte, and it just seemed so sensible to me. It was a world, and it was an apple the same size of the world, and it made lots of sense. It put Earth, the whole world, in such a proper perspective. I had a birthday in Paris, and at that time, the planes, as I said, took 14 or 16 hours. They had no security to go through, so your friends could take you right up to the nose of the plane. And I was on this golden Parisienne, and it was my birthday, and every time I went into the Copley's house, I almost died for that picture. I've never saw anything like it. It's so logical, an apple and the earth. They took it down off the wall and said, "Happy birthday." I mean, can you believe that?
That's wonderful.
Then they decided to take it out of the frame so I could take it right on the airplane. And they found an envelope, and they said, I couldn't believe it. And they gave it to me, and I got on this golden Parisienne, and I had 4 seats. And after it took off, then I thought, oh my God, I'll look at my picture. I opened the envelope, and it's not there. So I got mildly hysterical, and the pilot came out, and he said, all right, when we stop in Shannon, we will send a cable. So they sent a cable to the Copleys. By the time we got to Newfoundland, the cable came back, don't worry, it's insured. Do you know it turned up at the Lost and Found at Orly 2 weeks later?
Oh my God, thank you. That's
Totally unharmed. Isn't that amazing?
And what about Joseph Cornell? I mean, you have so generously given us this wonderful work that's on display right now. Can you tell us how you got it?
He was this little timid man. He lived with his mother in Astoria, Long Island, and he made all these boxes. And he came up with this one box, which is the sandbox, to offer it to the Copleys. And the Copleys knew I didn't have them. They said, why don't you buy it? And I bought it, and it's here now.
What's interesting about this particular box, it's a sandbox, and it was made to be played with. It's a game, basically, with a metal circle and a little pearl and blue sand, and the person who would own it would manipulate it and try to get the pearl into the hoop. And it was this idea that an artwork could be interactive. Both Duchamp and Cornell, and they worked together and they were friends together. They, in a way, came up with this idea of interactive art. That is the forerunner of so much of the contemporary art we show, such as the Felix Gonzalez Torres stack, which we have in the same room, that you can take away the paper from the stack. It becomes a gift to you. It's a way of remembering. So it's interesting about how history is made. Is there anything that you would like to tell the audience about having a life filled with art and artists?
It was fascinating for me, and those, as I said, those 10 years at Longpont, you never knew who you were going to meet there. But it was a fun time, and they were wonderful people, and they accepted us. And so it became, it's a kind of an emptiness now.
You have the art.
No, that doesn't talk back to you, though.
But you can think about them. And we talk to you because we're able to talk to you about them, and you keep the stories alive, and you keep the artists alive, and you make the art so much more meaningful by the fact that you did know them personally.
Well, if you're interested in gossip and want to ask me any questions, I'm very good on that.
Boris Emas is new to Miami. I first became acquainted with Boris when he and his wife welcomed MOCA's patron group to their home in Mexico City. They were clearly passionate, loved contemporary art, and it was completely international as well as focused on the up-and-coming artists in Mexico at the time. We're very fortunate that now he and his wife spend part of their time in Miami and are part of the entrepreneurial side of contemporary art. Boris recognizes how artists are basically problem solvers, and he has used that to the advantage of his business and helping other entrepreneurs. Do you see a crossover from this idea of entrepreneurship and the collecting that you do? Is there a connection?
Always. Art teaches you creativity, and creativity teaches you how to solve problems in life. Whatever you do, whatever your area is, life will present you with problems which you need to solve. And the amazing thing about art is that it really helps you think outside the box, helps you realize you can solve any problem with creativity. And for me, that is one of the biggest lessons in art. So that's intimately related to entrepreneurship.
Can you give me an example of where maybe for you, thinking about an artist or type of work might have helped, solve a problem or spur you into a new direction?
Well,
Now I put you on the spot.
No,
We can come back to that.
no problem. No, I love
Be
being in this
creative,
spot.
just
Not consciously. Not consciously. It is about thinking. Okay, he came up with this idea. What one would think perhaps is a permanent situation is not. When the process itself of how the artist started conceiving the art and how that changed. I was talking to a Mexican collective, Tercero un Quinto. They conceived a beautiful piece which has to do with political memory and with memory of society, that is the restoration of a mural. But for them, the mural was one of these political paintings we have in Mexico about vote for, president, ex-Y or governor, etc. And they restored that using the old technique, the Mexican technique for mural restoration. They conceived this as a one piece, and then they realized when they were assembling and restoring the mural, the fractions of the pieces were paintings on themselves. The exercise in fragmenting, in reshuffling the pieces, it's always keeps you fresh, and that in business is very important. When you think there is no solution, there's only one way, when you're taught that there's certain managing rules and executive rules you need to follow, you always realize you can reshuffle the pieces, and not consciously, but that's what I enjoy doing.
Well, I thought it was interesting that it was a visit to a museum, the Walker Art Center, that actually inspired your interest in Herman Nietzsche and thus into collecting. I mean, we haven't really heard too many people talking about the importance of a museum and a collection and an exhibition in shaping or educating a collector or inspiring a collector. Do you feel that that's an important role?
Absolutely.
And do you visit a lot of museums?
To me, which is what you do here, what also has inspired me in MOCA, is it happened in the Walker. There is a certain moment in time when you have the right curator, the right museum director, and the right group of patrons. And you and I have talked about this. You just presented the 15th anniversary collection. Again, you have done the same thing, and you have a wonderful group of patrons who have believed in your work, and you have presented important seminal work right out of the artist studio, or you have showcased the artist's work itself, which is very important. When people question the roles of museums nowadays as something that perhaps it's a rigid structure with no longer use, or same thing with the Biennale, or every of these institutions, they have a purpose, and a very important one. it is about presenting ideas and making us reflect on them and improve our society. You know?
When did you move from Mexico to here? Or you're still living in Mexico, but when
No,
did you...
I live in Mexico and I have my business in Chile as well. I moved a year and a half ago, a bit more a year and a half ago with a family. I received an invitation by Florida International University to be their entrepreneur in residence.
This is fascinating. Entrepreneur in residence. What do you do?
It's a very fancy title. I love it. No, yes.
What do you do there?
Well, basically, I assist the School of Business and the Pino Center, which is the entrepreneurship center, organizing the America's Venture Capital Conference. I mentor students and alumni. I do a bit of research, I publish, and I really question the role of entrepreneurship. I try to foster the spirit of entrepreneurship and for the student and the alumni to consider doing business on their own.
And you're also involved in something else very important here in Wynwood, the lab. Can you talk about what you're doing there?
I partner with a group of local entrepreneurs to create a co-working space. But what's very interesting is not just office space, is that you have a very strong network component paired with mentorship by other seasoned entrepreneurs and the people, the tenants themselves, along with an educational content. We went to the Knight Foundation and requested a grant. And the Knight Foundation told us not only we will give you the grant, but we want to be deeply involved with it. So they partnered with a group of entrepreneurs in creating the lab and being a partner in the lab. And that is very unusual. But the Knight Foundation felt it was so important what was happening in Miami. They were a big instrument in changing the city because of the arts, that they realized they could do the same in the area of entrepreneurship. We're having very interesting tenants that are talking to each other from all sorts of areas, and I'm sure that's going to change the scenery of Miami very fast. It's exciting to be part of that change.
And do you find that the entrepreneurs that are participating in the lab are crossing over and looking at what's happening in the art, in the galleries, in the studios, and the performing arts?
Yes, absolutely. They're talking to each other, and again, the common element is that the creativity and what the city really needed, and that's why the lab is so useful, is that we needed a physical space for all these talents to come together and talk. Part of what I was very interested in when moving to Miami was to be able to bridge all the network you have from previous times and previous businesses and previous ventures. Miami made sense to me, and part of the reason I move is that precisely I want to bridge that with what I do, for instance, in Mexico City with Sala de Arte Público Siqueiros. It's a Kunsthalle, the museum used to be Siqueiros' home. We commission the work. And for me, what's important is that we can bridge all of these museums and all, whether the sizes are different. I also, as you know, I participate in Tate. And for me, it was very important to be in that Latin American committee because whether you like it or not, art history gets written in those museums like Tate. And you have to be part of it. And you have to show those museums that there are artists that are worth showcasing. In my case, for instance, was Matthias Geritz. For me, it was very important to see that Matthias could be part of the Tate collection. And fortunately, we managed to do that. But the work with Tate has been so rich that it made me realize we absolutely can develop these networks between Mexico, London, Miami, with New York. You've seen that you are the perfect example of what work can be done between the New York and Miami, and we have to do that.
So how do we keep connecting the collectors, the artists, the general community?
By having these conversations.
Thank you so much, Boris.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
These collections are among the top collections in the world. We're so fortunate to have access to these, and we're also very fortunate to have access to Marty Margulies and Irma and Norman Brayman, who are very enthusiastic about their art, love to talk about their art, and are so supportive of the Museum of Contemporary Art. What brought you to Miami?
Job.
Okay. Did you have interest in art before you were here?
No, I had no interest at all. I went to New York with a friend, and we went around to some of the galleries, and I saw some people looking at work, and they seemed very intelligent, and the way the dealers spoke, they could take nothing and make something of it, and so I said, this looks like an interesting activity that I should be involved in, and one thing led to another, and I started collecting.
What was the first work?
Well, it was from a sidewalk fair and a couple of prints that I got.
But then what took you to the next step?
Prints were, didn't stimulate me enough. It was all Chagall, Picasso, Miro, because when I started, I was looking for safety because I didn't know what I was doing, and I went to a very trusted dealer and said, look, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm a real estate guy in Miami. And they sort of said, Miami, where's that? And the next step was sculpture. I started collecting sculpture, and I put it on one of my projects called Grove Isle. I related to sculpture because it was very spatial, and it was very enhancing to the particular development I was doing. So, and they used to say, here comes that guy from Miami who collects big sculpture. So that was my next step.
That's one of the things about Miami. We had space, and that is fed into some of the phenomena that we are seeing here. But Irma, you and Norman, you said, came here in '69.
A lot of it's the same as Marty's, but we came here because Norm wasn't working. He came here because he was working. And Marty says he didn't know a lot, so he was buying safely. We really know a lot, and we buy safely. So
is it because of the knowledge you know to buy safely?
it makes me happy to buy safely.
No, but when you say safely, what do you mean by safely?
Well, first of all, we don't buy emerging artists. I feel that to do that, you should spend a lot more time traveling, which we don't do. And not to say that Miami isn't good enough, they're just not enough. So if you're collecting emerging artists from Miami, you should still be out there, and you have to travel to do that, and we really don't do that. So we stay safely within the given, quote, names. Whatever those names are, we look for the best of them, but we rarely have an artist that someone will walk in and say, I never heard of that guy.
Well, but it is, you started, what, in 1970?
We started in 1980, and we bought Saul Steinberg. We
Really?
went to a show, a gallery show, and we saw a Steinberg show, and we loved it. And that was really the first piece I would say we ever bought from a gallery. And like Marty, we have a lot of sculpture. We also like that, the whole feel of it. And before we had, a lot of ground, we still had sculpture all over the house.
What is it about the sculpture? Because even one of your most recent acquisitions is a wonderful Picasso sculpture.
I was going to say because you can touch it, but you can't touch that one. You can walk around it, you see the back of it, you see the way it's made in many ways. And also, if you're out of walls, it's a great thing you can do. If you're collecting, you can always put a little pedestal in a little corner and add one more piece.
You've both been collecting for so long. Have you say you saw, you stuck with safe work, but even within the safe range, did things go in and out of being safe?
A lot of the safe people in the 80s are not safe anymore. It happens.
And is there a chance?
Tastes change.
Yeah.
Things change. And you see someone who you think is really great, but they're only great for 5 years. You agree?
Oh, I
But it's also about timing in a way. Something that you thought great and it was safe at that point. Just the fluctuations or the fickleness of the art world, would you still like it and keep it? Or do you feel that that's something that no longer belongs in the collection?
I really can't answer that. I guess it would depend on the piece.
What happens is, as the years go on, you collect things. At least I do. If things change, you move on. That doesn't mean you reject it. What it means is that you're at a different place, and the collections sort of grow, and you appreciate that which got you to where you are now.
And in a way, if you deaccessioned it, it would be hard to go through your collection and understand how you got from A to Z. You would, in fact, need to see those artists that might have slipped into obscurity to understand your own mindset, your own perspective.
But it's about my collection. It's not about obscurity. It's not about anything else but what you feel toward what you have. It doesn't matter what people say or critics or anybody else. It's about your feeling to an object, or in some cases, it's not even an object. It's a performance. It's what you feel. The essence of art is feeling. It doesn't matter what I have. It matters how you feel toward what you have.
Do you feel the same way, Irma?
It's something inside. It's something that you look at and you say, I really would love to see this every day. I'd love to own this piece. I would like to keep it forever. I can't say. It's like any emotional response that you would get to anything else. I mean, it's simple for us. If we like the artists and we buy one piece and then we see another, either earlier or later, certainly not the same time and not the same thing, and we're able to buy it, and you end up with a collection of a particular artist from the beginning of their career to the end. We bought a late de Kooning. Now, a lot of people don't like the late de Koonings, but if you started with the early de Koonings and you watch the progression every 10 years, 20 years, the late de Koonings, which I think are beautiful anyway, become much more important to you and the collection. It's sort of like watching your child from first grade to 12th grade, and you watch the progress of what's happening with him.
Do you spend a lot of time with artists, Marty?
Depends on the artist.
Who's your favorite artist as a friend, someone to hang out with?
Well, I used to hang out with George Siegel. He was a very close friend. Noguchi, he was a very difficult person, but it was really wonderful to be around him because you could absorb his whole being, you know, his spiritual qualities. And Frank Stella, very quiet person. I had the opportunity to meet Richard Long. And all in all, I tried to meet Michael Heiser. I met him many, many years ago, and he was very inaccessible. We have 4 or 5 Heiser works, and you know, he's out there somewhere in space.
Actually, about Michael Heiser, you've dedicated quite a bit of space to him at your warehouse in Wynwood. You've probably have done more for him as far as having to change your space than for any other artist, including digging up the foundation.
His father was an archaeologist.
Oh, that makes sense.
And he worked in earth art in the deserts. He didn't say much, you know, he was very quiet. So I said, "Oh, is that Michael Heiser?" You know, and I'm still saying it. You know, it's just like anybody else. You meet people, and if you can come away with something, learning and enjoying your time with that person, that's it.
I'd like to thank both of you for being here today and being so open and frank about collecting. Thank you so much.
Funding for Art Loft was made possible by the John S. and James L. Knight Foundation, Newman's Own, giving all profit to charity and pursuing the common good for over 30 years, Alva H. and Wyline P. Chapman Foundation, the Miami-Dade County Tourist Development Council, the Miami-Dade County Department of Cultural Affairs and the Cultural Affairs Council, the Miami-Dade County Mayor, and the Board of County Commissioners, and
in the Florida Keys and Key West, every night is a spectacular show. And every day is another masterpiece.